All right. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining our first Facebook Live. We hope to have more in the future. We apologize if there's any glitches. Hopefully, this will work wonderfully. I'll introduce myself. I'm Mikkel Bay. I'm the director and backup forensic interviewer for the CSC of McKean. Are you going to introduce?
Oh, sorry. I'm Josh. I'm Josh Haney. I'm the new forensic interviewer here at the Children's Advocacy Center.
All right, so we'll be spending the next while just talking about the Children's Advocacy Center, kind of our purpose and different things. We will not be answering questions throughout this presentation, but if you'd like to put a question in, Josh will be monitoring, and then we can answer that at a later time and date.
And also, a lot of the information that you're going to hear about, if you've followed our page before, you've probably seen all of it, but maybe you're new to the page or didn't dive into the information that we share. This is pretty basic of what a CAC is and what our team is, and it's a lot of information to cover, but we're going to do our best. Probably be about 40 minutes or so. But this will be available at a later date where we can have deeper discussion. And also talking about statistics of child abuse and everything that goes along with it can be triggering. So if there's anything that is upsetting to you or that you would like to talk about, our information will be available at the end so that we can reach out.
All right. So again, I wanted to thank everybody. By watching today, you're playing an integral role in taking away the stigma of child sexual abuse and not allowing this to remain a taboo subject any longer. So what is a Children's Advocacy Center? The Advocacy Center model is child-focused, in which representatives from 7 core disciplines work together, conducting joint investigations and making team decisions about the investigation, treatment, and management of child abuse cases. The reason why I have sexual in parentheses is, though, although that is what the CAC model was initially built upon, was working with child sexual abuse cases, we've kind of grown to adapt to work with other types of victims, such as witness to violent crime, serious physical injury, all different types of victims. This allows communities to mount a coordinated response to allegations of child abuse, and they're basically built to meet the unique needs of each county. So although there's different standards that we have to meet, every county can kind of uniquely build what they have already in place. We can be a nonprofit, government-based, hospital-based, or an umbrella of another organization. As long as we're providing all the elements of services to children and families. So instead of a child being shuffled to multiple different places individually, we bring all those services to them. So the mission of a CAC, we want to offer a seamless continuum of services to families that are coming into this process, and hopefully thereby decreasing trauma that is experienced by the child victims of abuse and their families, and hopefully be more efficient throughout the investigative process. So what are some of our goals and outcomes? Well, obviously a more effective and thorough investigation. If we're all working together from the first moment of the allegation or disclosure from the child, you're going to see more connectivity throughout the case. Increase child safety, getting children and youth involved right away. Decrease stress and trauma by not having duplicative interviews. More accurate decision making by inviting more of the team members to the table. And obviously, we're increasing resources for victims. McKean County already has a wealth of services and expertise in our backyard. The CAC model just allows each of those counties to build upon what we already have in place and better work for the child. Also allowing us to address any gaps in services that we might see for children for hopefully better outcomes in the future. So why do children need an advocacy center? Well, as you can see on the left, sometimes this is how it's going to look. In the case of if you don't have a CAC or a process, a child might end up having to tell their story multiple times to multiple people repeatedly, maybe to law enforcement, to a school teacher, to a guidance counselor, to a therapist, caseworker, parent, all these different people. And what'll happen is a child and their family just might not get the help that they need to help heal once the investigation actually part is over. So a majority of these cases don't even get prosecuted. So therefore, it's really important to get that constellation of services in place to support and promote healing for the family. We offer a range of services such as therapy, specialized medical exams, victim support and advocacy, case management, and more. So as you see on the right, ideally you want to have all those things in one spot or one ready available for children and families so that they're not getting lost in the shuffle. It used to happen that if a kid went somewhere and had to talk to multiple people, that case would fall through the cracks quite easily by the time it landed on a district attorney's office or someplace different. This way, we're hopefully managing a lot more of the cases appropriately. So on average, once a kid is disclosing, it used to be, and sometimes still is, unfortunately, a kid might speak with anywhere from 10 to 15 people. And hopefully with the CAC model, a child no longer needs to have to go through all these duplicative interviews. We're pulling these kids in so many different directions as is after they've already experienced a traumatic event. So think of it as like the game of telephone. What usually happens when you play that game? The first thing you start out saying is not initially what you hear 5, 7, 10 people down the line. This is like what it's like for a child when they have to repeatedly tell their story and have to go to all these different services individually over and over again. They're going to mess up details each time they have to tell their story, which in turn makes them look like they're not credible or they don't know what they're talking about. Even though we know as human beings and adults that often we can't tell the same story over and over again. We get what's called interview fatigue. And then we tend to not look credible, and it's not helpful when a child has to go, when it gets to like prosecution and such. So hopefully this will ease up on the duplicative interviews and have to only have one interview of the child. With the CAC, we always talk about it's not our building, it's not the 3 of our staff here at the Children's Advocacy Center. It's all these different disciplines that make up our team and really make up the core of the Children's Advocacy Center. Law enforcement, child protective services, victim advocacy, mental health, medical, and prosecution all work together to hopefully make all these services available to the child at once and have better outcomes. McKean's team includes juvenile probation because we deal with a lot of juvenile cases, and it helps to manage youth with problematic sexual behaviors and to assess needs for services as we're working with those kids. So as I said, at the Children's Advocacy Center, everyone will be available. Children only have to tell their story one time because all the services that need to hear it will be present in some way, some form, and be included in that process. It provides a less traumatic experience for the child, and they're more likely to feel comfortable knowing that they only have to tell their story once.
And knowing the process, the CAC process, and the team members involved, why do CACs exist? Because there's a problem. This shows the national statistics, so it's not directly related to McKean County and surrounding counties, but we will talk about those statistics too. So you can see these are all relative to sexual abuse. As Mikkel said, that's typically the highest rate of cases that we see at the center. 1 in 10 children will be sexually abused before 18. 90% of child sexual abuse victims know their abuser. And of the children who are sexually abused, 20% are abused before the age of 8. This is a map of all of the centers in Pennsylvania. This is not the updated map, is it?
No, they didn't put the updated one on NCA yet.
Okay. So you can see McKean County there, but we are red. So that means we are accredited. We became accredited last year. And that just means that we've met all of the standards and that we have to continue to meet all those standards to keep our accreditation and to ensure that we're offering the best services for each family. All of those standards, which we won't go into, but there are 10 different standards. One is the multidisciplinary team, which you heard quite a bit about. The other 9 are cultural competency and diversity, forensic interviews, victim support and advocacy, medical evaluations, mental health, case review, case tracking, organizational capacity, and child-focused setting. So most of those components you can see are part of the team, and each part of that team meets those standards. You'll see later in the presentation how we meet the child-focused setting. As a whole in Pennsylvania, 16,722 children were seen at a CAC last year. 2020 is looking different for everything in everybody's worlds right now. And we do have some articles that we posted in the past related to that and how the child abuse reporting and numbers have shifted and decreased, which I'll talk a little bit about later. And this quote just kind of sums up what CACs mean. So bringing the services to the child and the family, not making them jump around, going different places, talking to different people at different times, as Mikkel explained. That makes a child look less credible. It brings more stress to the families, and it takes away from what they truly need to start the healing process from the trauma that they experienced. So in McKean County, where do our statistics fall? So overall, child abuse affects over 1,700 children per year in our community. Last year, in 2019, 173 children and their families received services at the CAC. Our local children and youth investigated 750 to 1,000 reports of child abuse neglect, and the majority of the cases we received involved allegations of sexual abuse. This bottom part that you see is McKean County continuing to have one of the highest rates of child sexual abuse per capita in Pennsylvania. Stands true. I think we fell a little bit last year, but that was the first time in at least since I've been in the field, so at least 10 years. But we like to spin that to a positive. Not that there's more abuse happening in McKean County, but we have people who are knowledgeable and pay attention and make the reports. So the more reports there are, that's going to show the numbers. So it doesn't mean that it's happening more in our county. Hopefully it means that more people are reporting. And while Mikkel explained a little bit at the beginning about the majority of our cases being sexual abuse cases, we do see other cases that come through, and these are just different types of child abuse. So there's neglect, physical, sexual, emotional, human trafficking, child sexual exploitation, and witness to violent crime. And we're going to show you a video right now, and this video is it's Sasha Newlander, and he partnered with the National Children's Alliance and Mission Kids CAC in Montgomery County, inspired by his own case. And there's a full documentary of his. It's called Rewind, and it is available on Amazon. And this just shows a certain PSA that he was trying to share with everything, and we think it's really important for everybody to see it.
I'm glad that you guys are excited, and I'm excited to be here with you guys. Name something fun that you can do in 2 minutes. And if you have something in your mind, raise your hand. Okay, we got one over here.
Football. Draw.
Nice. Why is 6 afraid of 7? Does anybody know?
Because 7, 8, 9.
What are some things that come in threes?
The 3 little pigs. The 3 wise men.
Who here has heard of stranger danger? If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Telekinesis. To be able to become invisible.
So this stat is one that's personal to me. I'm a survivor of multi-generational child sexual abuse. I know how hard it can be to come forward and talk about what has happened. Most kids don't even know how to verbalize what child sexual abuse is. And there are so many reasons why kids don't come forward and tell their story. And as a result, they stay quiet and they continue to endure the abuse. Sometimes we can notice signs before they have it within themselves to come forward and speak. Unpredictable or frequent mood swings, loss of appetite, sudden changes in personal hygiene, calling themselves dirty, bad, disgusting, or unlovable. Another thing to look for is their behavior towards other adults. In some cases, for no discernible reason, their behavior will start to shift. Any adult who makes these children uneasy, it's important to take notice and start a dialogue with your child. All of these signs can be signals, but it's up to us to take action. We can educate ourselves to recognize these signs and to make sure that we are helping our children so that they can have a healthy, happy, connected future. Get in touch with your local child advocacy center to learn more about the signs of child abuse and what to do if you recognize them. Help make a difference.
So as you can see, our mission here at the center is ultimately to reduce trauma and promote healing for all child victims and families that come in here. And we do that in a multitude of ways. On staff, we have 2 trained forensic interviewers that are available, as well as a family advocate that's on site. We do what's called monthly case review meetings where we discuss all referrals from initial disclosure through the life of the case, which may be prosecution, might be therapy, might be ongoing advocacy services, but there's no timeline for us closing out with a family. We might work with them for a couple months to a couple of years. We do have an advisory board that meets quarterly for purposes of addressing policy and procedure. We accept referrals currently through the district attorney's office, law enforcement, and child protective services. That's important because we don't want to bypass the investigative component of what we do. So if a family were to call us, we would obviously hear out what they have to say, but we would want to make sure we put them in touch with Childline or our local children youth services to make sure that they're getting that report out there and that it's being addressed with all people on the team jumping on board. Our services are free to all victims of child abuse and their families. It is so important to note that no family should ever have to pay for anything that happened to them. And we obviously, like we're doing today, provide education in the community about our services and awareness and prevention. That's all ongoing. So a little bit more about what we do at the center. A forensic interview. A lot of people ask us what that even means. It's not at all like what you see on TV. So if any of you are special victims unit watchers, I am too, so no fault of anybody's. It's a great show, but it doesn't look anything like that. A forensic interview is not an interrogation of a child. It's a conversation between 2 people. It should be developmentally sensitive, legally sound, objective, and non-leading. We would never go in and be assumptive and ask questions that we already possibly know the answers to. So why a forensic interview is so important? We don't want untrained individuals that shouldn't be doing forensic interviews going out and talking to kids, because kids speak is what I always say. Some don't have the adult language or the developmental capacity to narrate their abuse in what we call adult speak or language. You want someone that's trained about age and developmentally appropriate question types, as well as linguistics, because that could really muck up the experience of not only the child, but a possible ongoing case and charges if we're not fully understanding what the child is telling us. And most kids, despite what people think, even little kids can narrate what has occurred to them. And we just have to we have to understand how they speak and what they're telling us. And so you want to make sure that somebody is doing it that obviously has that type of training involved. So a little bit more about forensic interviews. Typically one session designed to elicit a child's narrative. So we want to hear in the child's words as to what happened if a possible abuse scenario occurred. We do record all of our interviews, both audio and video. And we have members of our multidisciplinary investigative team that are observing that interview. Likely it might be somebody from the DA's office, but law enforcement and children and youth will be present. We do not do interviews where we don't have our investigative team present because we want to make sure we're only asking these kids questions one time and having the team there for the opportunity to provide feedback and ask their questions in a developmentally appropriate way. So as you can see down at the bottom, and I won't read through everything, you'll see our numbers from when we opened in 2013. This only goes up to 2018. But in 2019, we had 173 referrals. Out of that, we interviewed 154 children. 62% of that was sexual abuse. 26% was physical abuse, which notably was up about 66% from 2018. As of June 2020, our CAC has received over 1,000 referrals since opening our doors. So when people don't know that we exist or think that this isn't needed in our community, it is desperately needed to maintain these services for these children. So just so people can see kind of what the families see when they come in, we want to make sure it's child-friendly, child-focused. So our colors are very bright, very bold, very big. Obviously, embracing diverse backgrounds to be culturally competent. So when families come in, they're going to see this family room. We do have security on site, so we do have video recording going throughout the center so we can maintain eyes on what's going on at all times, and a buzz entrance. This is the interview room. So I don't know if you can see over the right side chair, it kind of looks like a light switch. That's actually our sound. That's all built into the walls. And we have two cameras, one that actually looks directly at the child and the interviewer, as well as a camera up in the corner where we could focus in on the child if something's going on, or say they're drawing something or writing something. We always keep what we call media in the room. So that's having markers, tangles to help ease a child's anxiety. That way a child doesn't have to be staring us in the eye. We don't have to be staring them at the eye. The point of the forensic interview is hopefully to calm the child and allow them an anxiety-free place to talk about whatever they need to. So we don't keep a lot in that space. We want to make sure, obviously, that we're neutral and that we don't have a lot that might take kids' attention away. And the observation room, I talked about where the team's going to be sitting. So as you can see in that picture, they can see and hear everything that's happening in that room. And we're recording live as that's going on. Following the interview, we're going to actually provide a disc directly to law enforcement. We don't maintain them on site. They actually go as part of the criminal investigation. And we always like to, keep new and updated materials for our team in there. So you can see a little bit about what our team and the children are seeing at the center.
So before a child and family visits the center, or once they visit the center, they're introduced to a victim advocate. So as Mikkel said, we do have a family advocate on site, and that's me. But we also have advocates from different areas in our county and surrounding counties. So we do contract with Elk, Potter, and Cameron counties. So when interviews are scheduled for their counties, an advocate from their local agencies will be present. And if they're not available, the information will be passed on to them. And we also work with the Victims Resource Center out of the YWCA in Bradford. And when they're working with a family, they accompany. We want to keep the same person as much as possible in contact with that family and child throughout the life of the case, as Mikkel said earlier, whether it's through prosecution or other referrals, or even beyond that. It can be a month, it can be years that an advocate works with a family. So from the moment they step on site until they no longer need us, advocates are there. And I'm not going to read through all of that. You can see the many things that advocates do, but basically it's to provide support to the families, to explain and educate them on all of the different disciplines that are involved in their case. So they know every step of the way what each person's role is. There may be some hesitation to work with children and youth services. There may be hesitation to work with law enforcement. But as soon as families and children understand what their role is, and that they are all we're all working towards the same thing, is to keep that child safe, to make sure the abuse doesn't happen again, and to hold the person accountable. Once they know what's going on, they're likely to follow through with the services that they need. So from 2013 to 2014, you can see 40% of the children and families at the CAC received on-site advocacy services. And that's because as an advocate working at the Victims Resource Center, I was only available to come over on certain days, traveling from Bradford to Smethport. So the family would receive a brochure and maybe not call when they didn't meet a friendly face, basically. So in 2015, they were able to write for a grant to bring a family advocate position on site. So since then, there have been 95 to 100%, and I would say 100% is pretty solid, that an advocate is available for children and families on the day of the interview. So looking more at the space around the office, you can see where I meet with kids. So the follow-up counseling, it is a supportive counseling. If there isn't an interview for a child, there are other referrals that can be made for boundaries counseling. So what's okay, what's not okay, the body safety. So there doesn't necessarily have to be an interview for a family to receive services. The meeting space, it looks a little bit different now. We had to spread things out, so we're actually not in that room. But 2020 is different everywhere. But we do have the same opportunity for families to meet with each team member afterwards. And like I said, from the very beginning, the child and family know exactly what's going on. The pictures of the interview room and the observation room are shared with the child before. They know who's here. They know what equipment's being used. They know each role. We don't hide anything from the kids, and we don't hide anything from their caregivers. The other component, we talked about medical exams, or medical component of the team. You're going to see more pictures of this, I believe. Yes. So medical exams are offered to every child who visits the CAC, regardless of the allegation or disclosure. This is for sexual abuse cases. And again, because our mission is to reduce trauma and promote healing, medical exams can often be the first step towards that healing process. The interview is a part of that, but a child knowing that they are physically okay is, I will venture to say, it's more important than that conversation. So you can see the numbers of medical exams completed, and 2019's on there, but it was 52 exams again. And we were fortunate in 2016 to have the opportunity, the Bradford Regional Medical Center and the work of our amazing nurses helped open up the First Step Clinic in Bradford. So this is a confidential location for children to receive an exam. Referrals are completed at our building at the CAC, so the child does not have to go to a waiting room. There's nobody else around. They don't even have to get a bracelet. It's not going through the emergency department. It's a safe space, and again, it's child friendly, and it gives more time to have time with the family and have conversations that are related to their physical well-being along with their emotional well-being. Skip to the next one. So this just shows the space a little bit more. And one thing I do want to mention is, while I said they no longer have to go to the emergency department, we always encourage, if a caregiver or an adult where a child discloses abuse, if they disclose sexual abuse or even physical abuse and there's injuries or concern of injuries, immediately go to the emergency department and they'll take care of you there. This is just an option for afterwards, because often for sexual abuse cases, disclosure can be delayed and injuries are in less than 2% of the cases. There's very rarely medical evidence. The most important part is that child hearing from a medical professional that their body is okay and that there's not a sign on their forehead saying that they were abused and that they know they're healthy. So this is one of my favorite quotes. Unless a child's believed, they're not going to truly heal. So talking about if a child discloses, always believe them. Whether there's doubt in your own mind, that doesn't matter. That child disclosed and shared something very personal and private with you, and it's important that they are believed. And any child who steps through our doors and or meets any of our team members is always believed, and that's the hope, is that then their journey to healing can truly begin. And unfortunately, we had to come up with this little infographic this year. But it's important that we are even more vocal now this year because of everything that's been going on. Children were hidden basically from those people that they trusted or that they may disclose to. So we can see the effects that we'll have right now, but that means that there's even more long-term effects in the future. And you can just see by our numbers, which this is as of September, as of yesterday, or is that today?
Yesterday.
Yesterday, okay. How the numbers have dropped this year. So just a few months ago when we first shared this, there was about a 52% decrease from years past. And that doesn't mean that abuse has stopped. It just means the children had no access to anyone safe that they could report to. We know that abuse thrives in silence, and without healthy adults around a child and feeling safe, they're not going to report what they might when they feel safe in an environment. So with kids, some kids back to school, we know some kids are at home, and we know that some are living in a space that is not so safe. So if you happen to recognize any signs or have any suspicion, that's the most important thing about reporting, is all you need is a suspicion. You don't need addresses, you don't need names, you don't need to have contact with that child. If you feel something is off in your gut, follow your gut and make that phone call and leave it up to the investigators to follow through with that. Sometimes it's difficult to feel that making a report has an effect because you might not see the outcome. Everything that's done is confidential. There are so many different avenues, so many different people that become involved. But if that phone call is never made, that can be truly detrimental to a child and a family. So always make that phone call. This just shows reasons, different reasons. There's a multitude of reasons that a child might not tell. Those are just, I can't say that there's one that is more common than the other. But the most important things are the do's or don'ts when a child does tell you. So it can be hard to hear anything traumatic that happens to a child. So when adults share something they know that happened to a child, they're saying it in adult words, but when you hear it directly from a child, it can be very difficult. But the important thing is to remain calm. Like I said before, believe them, let them talk. That's the easiest thing. Be their ears. You don't have to have a perfect response because there isn't one. We've all worked in this field for a very long time, and if anybody says they've come up with a perfect response to whatever a child is disclosing, they're lying. Every child and every situation is different. So having a perfect response or asking questions, just reassure them, remind them that what happened to them wasn't their fault, and let them know that you believe them. And if you can't promise that you're going to make everything okay, because none of us can promise that, but you can absolutely reassure them and support them and let them know that you're going to take the next step that could help them. So this is just another picture that shows, it's not their fault, that you believe them, you hear them. A child is never responsible for the actions of an adult. And that bottom quote pretty much sums up the importance of keeping children safe in our community. Safety and security don't just happen the result of collective consensus and public investment. We owe our children, the most vulnerable citizens in our society, a life free of violence and fear. And we can't do that without being educated. So I thank anybody who's listening to this right now or who is following our page, or when we share it in the future, when you're listening again. Awareness and just being aware that things are happening and not trying to hide from them or deny that things are happening. It's terrible to even believe that we have to exist, and we will all be happy the day we can close our doors because it's not happening. But until that happens, we will push and do everything that we can to help keep our community's kids safe.
One of the CAC's biggest goals is for a child to feel safe, just like Tanya said, and know that there's somewhere to go tell and to talk to someone who will listen to them. And hopefully this will lead to more children coming forward should they experience abuse and start that journey towards healing, which is so important. Some of the things you see on these slides are stuff that caregivers have directly told us. And the biggest thing is they feel safe, they feel informed, they leave with a sense of purpose and feeling like they've been heard. That's a huge part of what we do here at the CAC. So just to end, if you don't have heart, you have nothing. Thank you guys for listening to us. It takes one person to effectuate change. That could be you. So you want to make sure that you're including all of your service providers, but make sure that you're telling people about what is happening and reporting. I believe that Josh put up the Childline number. So I'm just going to say it again. Just like Tanya said, report, report, report. You don't need to have all the specifics. Let our great investigators do that job. Childline is 1-800-932-0313.
And just to go back to that last slide, just to end on a more positive note, you see all the pictures on this slide and that shelf. Those have all been donated items. That shelf we keep continually stocked. So we do have our wish list in notebooks, journals, pencils, markers. Whenever a child or teenager is here, they're able to leave with something after they're interviewed, and those are just some of the things through donations that we receive. All of that artwork was donated. Throughout the presentation, if you notice kids' drawings, those are all drawings that were done by children who have visited the center. So we absolutely keep it child friendly, but we also hang the pictures that were done by children who visit the center, because then it helps the next child coming in knowing that they weren't the first ones here, they're not alone in this, and that other people have been here before them.
So thank you again. There's some of our information, but you're already on Facebook. So obviously you've seen our site. Please tell more people about our site, like our Facebook. Tanya keeps that updated with a multitude of different things that are going around our community, ways you can help, especially in this crazy 2020 COVID year that we've all experienced. Please keep looking at that site, tell people about that site, and if you think of anything else that you would like us to talk about in the future, like I said, this is our first time, so thank you for sticking with us, and we'll see you again soon.